Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today I'm joined once again with my ongoing conversation with John Dayton and director Ralph Senensky as we continue to talk about the episodes of the Waltons that he directed, other shows that he directed in Hollywood, and just Hollywood in general. So please welcome John and Ralph. I want to make sure that if there was anything in particular you wanted to share that because we can clearly go on and on and on because the stories go on and are wonderful. So I just don't want to miss something that you particularly thought was.
I like doing this because, one of the reasons I started I didn't really start it. I started my website really started as a blog in 2009. I'd had a computer since the mid 80s and just, didn't really do much. And I thought, well, I could do that. I kind of wanted to tell the stories that I've been, I've told stories like this to friends and they always would get a kick. I thought, well, I'll just talk about that. So I did the first one. And then Michael, who you met when we came here, and he was the one who said, you can do film with that. And that was when I started with the next one. I started doing the film clips. And then I did that for about a year and a half. And then the blog, I had done 70 shows, 70 posts. And the blog, it wasn't strong enough to keep doing it. So but we got a computer designer to design the website, which is,
beautiful,
really hefty. And so I redid, at that time, I redid the 70 shows and then just went on to do another 120. But it was to tell these stories, to take people were more interested in television, in the television we were doing now, probably than they were then. They were interested, but it was different. And I just think we were all so lucky to be there then, the 50s in New York, and then the 60s and the 70s. That was such a special period that we were so lucky to be there. And
yeah.
To me, it was such a great time that it gives me great pleasure to go back and to share, but it also gives me great sadness because we had it and it's gone and it won't come back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's true. And that's true. And the movies went through the same thing, the 30s and the 40s. Mm-hmm. And then the 50s with the studios having to sell their theater chains and television, which cut into them. And they had the same thing that television has, the greed. The greed that takes over and starts making the decision. And that too is gone. And it's unfortunate because going back to the movies, when the movies started, there were the flickers. Respectable actors didn't want to act in movies, but they turned it into an art form. And unfortunately, the majority of the time today, it is no longer an art form.
It doesn't have to be the Waltons. What would you say, Ralph, what were maybe some of your top favorite projects that you worked on, whether scripts or...
The early years, especially. Dr. Kildare, that was great because I was on it, on staff, and then ended up doing 5 of them. The Twilight Zone that I did, Printer's Devil, which is one of 18 hour-longs. That, and then in January of 33, have we got time for a story?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was January. I think it was the latter part of January, 1963. And at that point, I had directed for 15 months and had directed 6 shows. Now, 6 shows is 6 times 13. that many days of work. So when people think, oh, 6 shows, wow. No, 6 shows in 6 months, that's a lot of time off. And it's January, and I've been figuring, well, this is hiatus time. I will not be going back to work. Hopefully I'll still be working and get a job, when the new season starts in May. And I got a call from my agent who said, you have an appointment tomorrow to meet Herbert Leonard over at Columbia Studios about doing a Route 66. So I went over the next day in Columbia Studios, back in the 30s, known as Poverty Row. And I had spent the first year or so of my life typing radio script catty corner from Cattery Row when I worked at CBS Radio. So, I went through this, and I was used to Metro. Metro was glamorous. And even it was a little run down, it was still glamorous. This was this long, dingy character into a big room, people in it, little meetings going on. The other end is a big desk with a little guy sitting behind it. And I come in and sit down, and it's Burt Leonard, and he asks me a question. And while I'm answering it, he's on the telephone, and he's turned away. And then Matt asks me another question and turns away. And did that for 3 or 4 questions, and then I was dismissed. And I thought, well, okay. Goodbye to that one. Went home, got a call from my agent. You got the job. Call tomorrow about the script. So I called the next day to ask, about a script. And I was told, well, the writer came in. The script didn't come in, but the writer did. He's back from the location. He's worked out his script problems, and he's gone home to start writing the script. Come in tomorrow at 3:00. Bring your baggage, because you're leaving tomorrow night for Corpus Christi, Texas. So I went in the next day, 3:00, and they handed me 19 pages, a script by Sterling Silliphant, In the Closing of a Trunk. And I'm told the marvelous Marion Doherty in New York, casting director, they don't have a script, it's cast. She's cast Ed Begley, Ruth Froman, and Don Tubbins. And I read the 19 pages. We had some meetings. They gave me 4 more pages. They put me on a plane that night. I arrived in Texas, Corpus Christi, Texas the next morning. And they take me first. One of the things that in the script, we know a ferry boat. And there was ferry boat because it went from Corpus Christi to an island. And I didn't know until I started doing my website that I wasn't in Corpus Christi. I was on the island. So we went there and we scouted it, and had a long sequence on that. And then now we had to find the other major set location, that big house that Sterling had described, big house that sits up on stilts, and it's in a totally isolated part of the ocean, of the beach. And we're right on the shore, the whole thing. But there's nothing on either side. And so we get in a car. Sam Manners was the production manager. We drive down the whole length of the beach. There is no such house. So we drive back, and there is no such house. So we drive it again. And Sam said, Sterling was here. He saw the house. Because that's what he does. He goes to the location, sees what he wants, and he saw the house. We drive it again. It's not there. We finally saw there was a 1-room shack up on stilts with nothing around it. And we said, well, that'll have to be it. Now, this is the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. We're searching. I'm to start shooting Monday morning. Because so of course we'll go to the ferry boat. That's all we've got. The house we saw, it's 1 room. I mean, it is not in good shape. It has a closet. We don't know what else is going to happen in that room. What if Alma, the character, has to leave? There's a closet. So I said, okay, we'll put a door on the closet. And then, if she has to leave, she'll just go through the door, and that'll be another room. So we go down the next morning, very early. Jack Martin, wonderful cameraman, the old timer, gives him my first setup on the ferry, and it's an overcast, drizzly day. There are no buildings where you can put lights in. He said, I can't shoot. I mean, the faces are going to be against the sky. We can't shoot. We spent the day at the end of a dock. I think I got 3 inserts of fish coming out of the water for a later sequence. That evening, we don't have a cover set because they're working on the house. And the forecast for the following day is more of the same. So that evening, a secretary in Hollywood dictated 3 scenes to a secretary in Texas who typed them, printed them, distributed them. And those are the scenes that I will now shoot the next day. Burt Leonard called me that night, tell me the rest of the story, so I'll know where these scenes are going to fit in. and that's what we did. The next day, they did say the scripts are finished. The writer has finished it. We're not going to mail it. He's going to fly them out Tuesday. He'll fly them out, but he won't get there till noon. I had them that night. So we had the shots shooting the next day.
Jeez.
The script is dynamite.
What was the show?
In the closing of a trunk.
Wow.
Route 66.
Say again?
Route 66, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's more Eugene O'Neill than Route 66. I mean, it is powerful show.
Wow.
We ended up. Oh, we haven't finished yet. So then I have to do the next morning. So now one of the scenes the first scene I'm going to do is going to be in a fish house with Ed Begley, Don Dubbins, Guy Raymond, John Lorimore, and I think Harry Hickok. Fine actors. And we shoot. It's a long scene. We shoot it, and by lunch, it's done. Great. Jack Marta came up to me and said, I'm sorry to tell you, there is a camera failure. We have to do the scenes again this afternoon. So we did, and then we did the other scene, and the other scene was a scene that comes later. One of the best scenes in the film, and Marty Miller, Don Dubbins, and Ed Begley are doing this scene. They barely read the script. I mean, you would never know from the performances.
Wow.
And the crazy thing, of course, the whole thing ended up, and then I must say that Route 66, I mean, they too needed to, schedule-wise, needed to work 6 days. They said the only director that ever did it in 6 days was an old-time film movie director, George Sherman. My show went 8 days, but the first day, that's a day detracted. So that's 7 days we've filmed, except the second day, I only shot for a half a day because we lost the morning. So I did shoot it in 6.5 days. I got back to Hollywood afterward, and Jackie Gleason, not the comic, one of the editors, with a big smile on his face, told me, he said, our first cut was 67 minutes.
Wow.
Out of this mess of a time. And they then proceeded to book me. I did, in the next 2 months, I did 4 more shows.
Wow.
another one in Texas, and 3 in New York.
Wow. You definitely worked on sort of the who's who of shows, I mean, I was looking over it, and some of the shows that I grew up loving
Of
and
course.
watching, that I mean, I always loved, I noticed that you did a couple episodes of the Wild Wild West, which I always
Yes.
thought was such a fun romp of a show,
Yes. It was fun to do.
Yeah.
And the people on it, Don Rickles.
Ah, yeah.
If you still got energy, talking about crying, can we talk about Grandma Comes Home?
I was going to say, we have to touch on that before we end off here.
Yes. Let me just say that for me was really a special occasion. Just Andy White called and asked me if I would do it, which pleased me. And it just, I said afterward, Ellen was nominated for an Emmy, but didn't win. And I said, what she should have won, what a profile in courage.
Mm.
It was just miraculous.
Maybe, Judy, we could, for our audience that's not seen it or not familiar with it, maybe you could just give a little synopsis of what that episode was about.
Well, they need to watch it if they haven't. I mean, I think the regular viewers have seen it multiple times, but yeah. But Grandma finally, after, of course, Ellen Corby in real life had a stroke, and we, as a family, the storyline was that Grandma was in the hospital, and we didn't, it was never said what it was, but just that, the doctors were taking good care of her. And then finally, she's able to return to home. And it really was a monumental thing for the company to have brought back someone who was as impaired by the stroke as Ellen was. I mean, what people saw on screen was her right side was paralyzed. She struggled to get every word out that she said. She would have to just work it and work it and work it to try and get a word out. And so it was not someone acting as if they had fewer words, less ability to speak than her. It was actually, that was more words than she was able to generally speak. And she would have someone, and I think it was her caregiver, that she'd look at someone, she'd say it, and she would look at your mouth, and she'd try to copy it so that she could repeat it back. So it was tremendous work for her to do any of that. But to me, watching it, I always said it's a masterclass in acting, because what she did with no words was so much more profound. Yes, than what most actors. We rely on words, so it was a lesson. So it's don't rely on the words.
Right.
And it was a struggle with CBS and our company, actually, because the excuse was it would take too long. It would just take too long to do that. I remember fielding telephone calls from people who I didn't even know who they were, expressing, can you do this? Can you say this to certain people? And of course, the script was brilliant, Rod and Claire. It was very emotional. And Ralph, do you recall? It was on 26 on stage 26, the front porch. We had 2 cameras, and you cleared the set. You didn't want anybody but essential people to be on the set when the sweeping scene occurred, and Ellen said,
"You old fool.
That's a great scene too.
Yeah.
And again, I cried. You let me stand next to you.
That and the shelling peas, the
Oh,
snapping peas scene with
green
Michael.
bean scene.
The green bean scene.
Yeah. Not a dry eye on the set or in the audience.
We haven't gotten into The Warrior, and we had no words. We just shot it. When I finished, and the next show was Grandma Comes Home.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that Will had been one of the people urging the company to bring Ellen back. And he had been so wonderful during the show. And at the end, they wanted me to do a promo of him talking about the show. And so I filmed that. That was the very last thing we filmed. And so then I hugged him and said goodbye to him. I'm going to break down now.
Yeah.
And Will smiled at me and said, you've forgiven me. And I said, not completely, Bill, not completely. Those were our last words, because I was booked to do the opening show of the next season. And Andy called and told me what they were planning, that it was going to start with the family around the grave. And I said, Andy, I can't do it. My mother just died.
Oh, Ralph.
My mother died the week that Grandma Comes Home aired.
Oh my gosh.
And Judy, you have to be commended. I so believe that if this was a special show, but in a special period, and it mustn't be, especially in our current times, it mustn't be lost. And I mean, there are not many. Tell me another show that is doing what you're doing, which is with an audience that you have. It was just special. I refer to the Waltons as an oasis in the desert of mediocrity, which it was.
Fresh water.
Mhm.
Fresh water.
Yeah. Well, there's an ending line if I were to script it. Leave it to you, Ralph. Thank you for joining me for the continuation of my conversation with John and Ralph. I will be back with more behind the scenes of the Waltons, more Ask Judy, and more special guests. Thanks for watching.